I'm going to deliver Liberating or Liberatory Democracy, a presentation which consists of 3 titles, and there are other subheadings. As for the content of my presentation, many thinkers and movements are cited here in terms of their opinions, and I would like to give certain personal takes, opinions, quotes, and intertext understanding, and I'll try to present them in a mosaic form. I do not have any assertive actually claim about these elements. I just believe that they need to be discussed and evaluated collectively. The language I'm trying to use is actually is not a technical or expertise language, but rather a language we use between the friends. Hopefully, I will be able to preserve that style and discourse. Second, I will do a short introduction, starting with Shakespeare. In the 5th section of the first stage of Hamlet, Shakespeare says, actually, things has started to go haywire, or everything is out of joint, or yes, everything is out of joint. And in such a multi-layered crisis, we see demographic, political, economic, sociological, ethical, ecological, social, gender-specific, pandemic dimensions. As for the layers, they start with the individual and go to a global scale. So here we can talk about an interregnum from Gramsci understanding. Actually, this is like a interregnum period. And Gramsci says in his notebooks, this crisis is about the death of the old and the reality of the lack of birth for the new. In this interregnum period, we can think of many pathological symptoms, and we see them in our lives. This phenomenon concerns all the relevant parties, including the UN-related institutions, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, the World Social Forum, the business world, military world, Papa Francesco, Eliezer Imam, Ayatollah, and even Dalai Lama. So they all agree on the fact that we have a crisis. However, there are quite different approaches in terms of resolving these crises, and in this difficult situation facing the humanity, I developed an internal way out called Liberatory Democracy, and I'll try to explain it while taking courage from Martin Luther King's inspiring saying, when our days become close to the clouds close to us and our nights are darker than 1,000 nights, then we are in a hurry for having a creative civilization. This is a symbol of optimism, and as a actually full optimistic, I use it throughout my life. What is liberatory democracy? Here we can think of it in democratic terms, and the main elements of liberatory democracy. How do I define democracy? I sent you a text including this famous poet's understanding of democracy in his letter to a friend. I will skip that part though. According to my take, liberatory democracy is a way of existence where all the living creatures and living systems coexist. This is a meaningful lifestyle. Liberatory democracy is an open system based on common sense, open-ended, and a non-ending process. This democracy type, in its essence, starts with individuals, then goes to the local, national, global, and the planet. Actually, this is sort of a self-governance, starting with the local food. And when we look at the main elements of actually liberatory democracy, we have plenty of content here. I will try to skip very quickly. Actually, liberalizing engagement is the first element. Pushkin, the famous Russian poet, says, "Let me sing the freedom song of freedom," and he was punished a lot, exiled and imprisoned because of that. As for deliberating engagement, I understand from it that the individuals and the group members are free from oppression, political barriers, injustices, indiscrimination, exploitation, dogmatism, and other oppressions. The liberating engagement is a process. And here we need a liberating conscience to start with. Liberation has a key function in all its dimensions, and the French resistance movement against the Nazis represents it by Paul Eluard, who is a great poet himself. He says, "I resume my life with the power of a word. I was born to know you. I was born to name you. You, freedom." Secondly, I placed ethics as an element, and here I make this quotation of Socrates. Living is not the biggest principle, but living the right way, he says. And Plato work of Socrates is seen, and the ethical foundation is laid there. Here, ethically, people question whether they are right or wrong, the meaning of life, how a human being should live, what our responsibilities are for the humanity. The essence of ethics is stated by Peter Singer, a great modern philosophy. If a human being feels whether a person justifies themselves in terms of they're rich when there are people starving in different corners of the world, or when animals are in desperate situations. So here we are going to look at ethics, and then I will come up with relevant answers. Ethics is also related to human rights, and human dignity is a new concept dating back to 3-4 decades. I brought it to the forefront, though. We cannot talk about human rights unless we first talk about dignity. If the famous Francis says, "I am a human being, nothing related to humans is stranger to me." So human dignity forms the basis of human democracy and human rights. And this is stated in the UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 as such. All humans are equal in dignity, are born equal in dignity and rights. And the International Convention on Civil Rights, created in 1966, refers to birth-related rights of humans, and human rights cannot be alienable, cannot be transferred, and cannot be opposed. And human rights are universal, regardless of the ethnicity, religion, color, and other elements. All the people are entitled to it. We are entitled to human rights because we are human. Otherwise, they do not vest. They are not given by any authority to us. They should not brag about it at all. And freedom, nourishment, education, health, all are actually included in it. Democracy is a basic human right. It is the right to have rights. And that word I forgot the speaker says, who said that. Ben Habibi makes that quotation. And when Habib says this, human entity is requested to be defined as a legal person. It has a long historical backdrop, and the main document is the 1948 UN Declaration of Human Rights. This declaration consists of 30 points, and the main content is to create legally binding outcomes. The first one is International Convention on Civil and Other Rights, and also there's another aspect of it, economic, in terms of economic and religious rights. Another element for liberatory democracy is ecological interaction. You may not encounter this in many writings on democracy, but the biggest master is Mikhail Bakhtin, one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century. Bakhtin says, reality is not born in an individual's mind, or neither can it be so there. It is between the humans seeking reality together in their actually dialogical relationship. Dialogical relationship has a vital importance for democracy. Humans are communicate with each other, and human life finds its meaning in relationships, and the ecological relationship is a real relationship between people where they speak as me and you. And here the instrumental logic or monologism is opposed. Monologue takes people away from value, and here you need to have this behavior to get to know each other. You don't need a central voice here. You need multiple voices. In dialogue, people do something together. They create something from scratch. Another subheading is justice and equality. How am I going? Is it okay? We have intellectual colleagues. They know it well. Kojit Yuan gives one of the best definitions. In 6th century, says justice is an unchanged will to give everyone their right, and it is one of the main virtues of humanity, having a central position in all economic, religious, and other senses. I think fair behavior, reasonable, and honesty, determining what is right and wrong, and sanctifying the human existence are necessary for justice, and equality is one of the main elements of justice. When we say equality, we can refer to the founding element of justice, and equality means equal opportunities for all throughout their lives, and regardless of what conditions they were born into, what they believed in, what gender they belong to, whether they have better conditions or not. It means guaranteeing their living conditions and having similar economic, political, and religious conditions, and giving them equal treatment. Equality and freedom should be in full compliance. Etienne Palibart, the famous French philosopher, says the rejection of liberty destroys equality. Now I will talk about peace as another subheading. Peace is the lack of violence and use of violence, and being freed from the fear of violence among groups. Like Gandhi said, Peace is an indivisible part of our existence. As the UN General Assembly states, peace is one of the rights of individuals. And it says the people of our planet have the right to a holy right to have peace. And here they can talk of symbiotic relations of peace. Another subheading is critical approach, and here it looks at new liberating approaches for democracy. The main element here is relentless criticism of everything, and here we talk about self-conscious, deep intellectual nature of it, instrumental mind, and all determinists, positivists approaches are indispensable, and that provides a guidance for a society, laying the foundation of a free society community. Critical approach should involve praxis, information, and scientific information and practice together. As Goethe stated, knowing is not enough. We need to practice. Wanting is not enough. We need to do. Another subheading is the principle of hope. I have 5 minutes. I'm moving very fast. William Goethe can be quoted here. What has been proven today was dreamed one day. The principle of hope is what my approach is also based upon. That principle takes people and saves them from hopelessness. And Ernst Bloch in 20th century says, I see humanity's essence as hope. And we talk about a formation which is non-stop, which is continuous, and future. Hope is about future, it says. Liberating socio-economic system. Let me tell a little about that. Liberatory democracy requires a liberatory economic and socio-economical system where everyone's needs are met, and I will skip these parts as I'm running out of my time. Gender equality is another subheading. This is a basic human right for a fair and just world. It sets the foundation for long centuries. Men or patriarchal approach dominated the world, and it still does, but women movements in recent times develops new ideas, removing the artificial boundaries between the domestic and political. One of the most recent initiatives for that is the gender equality goal of the UN Development Goals, as cited in 2015, strengthening all girls and women. Active citizenship is another one. It's a quote from Zülfiye. If I'm not a participant, what am I? I need to participate in order to exist. Now I'll skip that part. Ecological perspective is studied by all of you. I will just use a quote here from Danisheva. In the economy of nature, the valid currency is not money, but life. I think that is self-explanatory, and I'm skipping here. The new urbanization development refers to perspectives, spatial perspectives. I'll make a quotation from Barber. Barber says, urban might be a part of our nature or not, but it's our history. It defines how we actually entertain, how we live, and that will summarize it. Here we talk about social and spatial relationships, planet relationship, spatial relationship. I do not mean to elaborate on them. Now I come to the new municipality understanding, which is well known by you, by our audiences. In this new municipality understanding, you move beyond the current municipality approach. And basically, we talk about the urban right, urban mutual participation, direct participation, grassroots initiatives, committee formation, objecting to central governance. There are many other subheadings. A new approach to government and government relationships. The bigger the government is, the higher the likelihood of misuse. We experience it in all around the world as well as our country. Ufuk Pamukoğlu says as government actually permeates into all social relationships and disrupts it. The new political understanding, I will also skip through it as you have already an idea about it. The new look at public and public goods. Here Master Senate says the following: in public space, you can see a retreat of everything in today's world.
Olan iyi kalite ve kişisel tatmin.
In this sense, the private sphere has been autonomized. And this is not anything good. In the most recent pandemic crisis, we have seen that without adding any value to the public sphere, it's impossible to sustain it's very difficult to sustain our lives. And there is an issue of language and the real language, most recently, there's a concept called post-truth. That's a weird approach. And here, a normal language should be the language of the reality, transparency. There is no place for uncertainties or vagueness. I think this is best seen in a quote from Liechtenstein: "The borders of my language is the borders of my world." I think this is an awesome saying. Justice, spirituality can be very interesting. In liberating democracy, there cannot be an integrity without spirituality. Here I'm telling that this is about the integrity of the nature. Here, Cecilio San Francis says that spirituality gives us hope where there is desperation, gives light when there is darkness, gives joy when there is sadness. A new international cosmopolitism, and I'm just skipping the Diogenes quote, a strong civil society. I'm also passing this very quickly. If you ask me, I can give you the details of that. And this is one of the sine qua non of democracy. Love, fraternity, and friendship are very important here. I would like to make a quote from Ibn Arabi, Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. He believes, I believe in the religion of love. This is an awesome text. I recommend this to you. I'm about to finish. I'm coming to the start again. The animal's perspective. The animals cannot be seen as a commodity anymore. They cannot be used for the artificial joys or funs of people. I skip this. Liberatory secularism. I have a small quote from Gandhi. I always make my oaths on religion, but this is my personal issue. The state has nothing to do with that. The state should deal with our worldly well-being and security, not with our religion. I think this is very clear. And then intellectual integrity. You are all intellectuals, so this is about you. Public intellectual. Here we can see what a public intellectual should do. They can say no to all the goals. They can demonstrate a democratic character. They can say the truth to the power. They can raise the alternative opinions. They can defend freedom and justice and anti-hegemonic position. Finally, a democratic resistance is the final one of my subjects. For liberating democracy, for sustaining one's existence as a last resort, without violence, democratic resistance can be resorted to. The right of resistance is one of the basic principles of democracy, and it should be peaceful, non-violent, and this is also explained in this text. For conclusion, excuse me, I have passed my time. Liberating democracy, it doesn't need any concluding remarks because it's an open-ended and non-finished process. For this reason, my proposal will end with the invitation from the great poet Nazım Hikmet. He says, "And the human slavery to human." This is our invitation, living like a tree, one and free, like a forest in a fraternal way. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your patience. Madam Burcu.
Because we will have Mr. Kelmend Zajazi next. I would like to introduce him briefly. He is Executive Director of SNALAS, the well-known network of associations of local authorities of Southeastern Europe since 2007. He is also a member of Group of Independent Experts on European Charter of Local Self-Government. Mr. Zajazi, welcome, and you will have 10 minutes, and apologies for mispronunciation of your name.
You know, it's good. I think it sounds better than it is. First, let me just share my overall impression that the paper of Mr. Yıldırım is very inspiring. It is, as he says, a mosaic of accumulated from accumulated experiences that he has had, observations, but also readings. It's obvious that he has a lot of quotes and putting together in a very interesting way, very inspirational. Very briefly explained, but very deep. In many cases, so the concepts are quite deep and make you think about it. And I think all these fundamental ingredients of democracy, the universal rights, and that we all, most of us, we all understand them, we know them, but I think there is a constant need to think about it and discuss and see how to make them live. And here I would one reflection I had while reading it is that I was wondering what is the difference between a liberal democracy and liberatory democracy. And here, so it inspired me to think in this direction. That, of course, I mean, we all know what is the liberal democracy and how, as a political ideology, but also as a compilation of all these fundamental ingredients of democracy. But I agree that maybe we live in times, as this paper is anticipating something new to be born in the future, because there is I think I agree there is a tension, internal and external tension. One tension internal is that these global urbanization, it's making a lot of people live in very dense areas, a very dense population. It is an attention about how we are organized, how we live, and how all these fundamental elements are in play, and then there is an external also pressure, and these are the global challenges we face. I will not enter to them, but just as an example, the climate change, for instance. So in these tensions, we need more than ever some mobilization of humanity, of individuals. And I think here maybe I would say that what makes the difference between the liberal and liberatory might be that the individual needs to be liberated. And very often, because I think the main problem in this continuum of individual, then the local community, national, and then global arena that is explained in the paper, I think the main challenge is in this space in between the individual well-being, individual needs, and the public space. And the public space is actually starts from the community, and then it goes all up. And this is the space actually where the main tension is. And I think this is what the individual needs to be liberated from. Perhaps this security. I mean, the person that is insecure cannot think about public good. Has to think first about existential issues. That's why the liberal democracies are strong when you have a very strong middle class. And that's why maybe this system is having difficulties to get rooted into more poorer countries where the insecurity of individuals is very high, and this is the main blockage in this space between the individual and the public space, the public well-being and public activity. So one of the things that the liberatory democracy maybe needs to do is to safeguard or to eliminate this fear of the individual and make the freedom more apparent. And then this constant race for resources or for the greed that comes with it about the individual well-being is a problem. And then the exclusion of groups, of different identities based on whatever. So this inclination of people to get into grouping, to build a group identity is a big problem, because differences and exclusions are really harming the entire humanity. Then the other, just one more point I would add, that because of this multi-dimensional crisis and also the global aspect of crisis, I think networking is very important, and it's not only because I work in an organization that starts with a network of, but I'm deeply convinced that we have all the means to connect communities and create a common vision of what we want, how we want our future to be. And maybe SDGs are the first step for this, and I don't think they will make a big change, but they are the right step in the right direction. And I think that's the most important, because you remember SDGs are started to localize, and here I think the localization of building a common vision and working all together on the common vision is a must for humanity. And here I think the networks will be the key instrument for the future. These global mobilization can never happen on a top-down level. I mean, even sustainable development agenda is a top-down, has a top-down structure, and we see the deficiencies in the implementation still. So it is there must be a very positive, a very constructive networking among people of all different professions and different to safeguard all these important ingredients of democracy, to work on it. And I think it's very important to discuss about it, to keep them alive, as Mr. Yıldırım is contributing to it, and see and always find other ways and more inventive ways to assure that they are here with us. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zajazi. Now we will have Professor Erbay Arıkboğa from Marmara University. Erbay Hocam, welcome. And Erbay Arıkboğa has many precious academic works. We learn from him. He works on his studies on local governance, metropolitan structures, and local autonomy. Hocam, you may have the floor, and you have 10 minutes.
Çok teşekkürler. Çok sağ olun.
Thank you very much, Madam Zülfiye. Today I would like to speak less. I will try to speak as short as possible. Mr. Selahattin is very productive person. We are familiar about his past work. However, recently, I think it was 2 years before the pandemic. I have this book of Urban Dictionary. Here it's on my shelf. I heard such a work when it talks about dictionary. Dictionary is a word being described with a sentence. But when I obtained the book, it was kind of a mini encyclopedia. It's something between encyclopedia and a dictionary. It's an interesting experience of writing. And in this book of Liberating Democracy, I would like to say something about that book of Liberating Democracy. It has its own specific structure. I've planned my speech in 4 sections. One is about the title of Liberating Democracy. So this is about using an adjective to describe the democracy. The first thing that comes to mind is a new model of democracy. What we say democracy is how to create the power and how we are going to limit the power and what will be the relationship between the power and the community. And when we say community, it's not only human beings, animals, nature, everything is in this scope. So humanity started to look at this issue in a different way, how we are going to establish the relationships. So this is the title of the book, but the content of the book is more of close to this panel. It's a proposal of urban governance. It says something about local democracy. Not how to select the mayor or president in a structure where they exist, in what kind of environment, on which principles they should work. He's talking about these issues. For example, let's say there is a municipality, and if we deem that they are making a voyage on the sea, the principles in the book of Selahattin Yıldırım is like a sea lights. So there are certain lights, and if you travel paying attention to those lights, it will be better. Otherwise, you can make some accidents. This is what he said. Concerning the structure of the book, the gentleman from Nalas mentioned about this. It has an artistic structure. Here there are certain principles and they are followed by certain quotations. However, these quotations are not as what we are used to. For example, Selahattin prepared a text, and in this text, different thinkers were taken to his book as a guest. I think he has achieved such an artistic approach. When talking about and discussing a subject, it's more than, or it's different than getting a support for yourself. He has made a very good selection from the famous and important thinkers. In this sense, he makes commentary with his own opinions. Sometimes he opens up on them, and sometimes he adds something, and finally he finishes. All of us, thankfully they have shared, and we came here after reading the text. But the audience should not expect a text with many pages. Actually, half of the book has been explained to us in his presentation. Almost half of the book has been told in his presentation. So it was an interesting situation, and I like that. On the principles, I do not to dwell upon the principles for a long time, because these are shared in very important platforms. For example, he talked about spirituality, a principle. He said it might seem weird that we are talking about spirituality. In the area of political science, this area has not opened up sufficiently. But if we get into a different perspective, for example, in the micromanagement and organizational theories, when we look at the management theories, they have discovered this area of spirituality in 1930s. How we should turn on the light to increase production, together with the experiments of Houghton, which lasted 6 years because they kept finding other than what expected. And when they were trying to find out the reason of that, they showed that the things about the people's moods had an impact on the production. So the human has a spiritual dimension. When you try to keep it apart, what you say is, I need just part of the potential, and the rest I'm not interested. That's what you mean when you say that. And therefore, discussing it, talking about it, human is not one being, homo economicus, running after its material interest. It's human is a whole with the emotional world. And then there's a song. Okay, when you press this button, we cannot sing a song. We do not have buttons. And we cannot shift from one mood to another mood. Human being is a whole with all material and moral components. In the field of democracy and politics, we should pay attention to these elements. And I think Selahattin Bey, together with others, human rights, human dignity, women's rights, animals' rights, and in the final part of the text, in the last part of the text, there are certain subjects such as the situation of new cities, the metropolitans, and the integration of rural and urban. Yes, there's such a phenomenon. However, here, the principles and phenomena should they be together in this book? I have some reservation in that. If we are going to place the phenomena as well, then the phenomena are like some kind of trends. For example, in 20 years or 50 years time, we're expecting this kind of trends. That's a different dimension. And this kind of trends are not the subject of this book, in my opinion. When you say phenomena, someone can say that the climate change is not only melting the ices in the poles, the biggest impact is on the cities. Someone else can say that there's an ongoing Syrian issue. But if Syria is a flower garden, there would be refugees from different countries to Turkey, and many people think in the similar way this issue of refugees will grow and grow. Local reactions will go up because when refugees come, they do not go and settle in the mountains in order to earn a living. Rightfully, they go and settle down in cities, and in the cities there will be certain resistance to that, and the numbers will go up. So I had a reservation about the presence of the phenomena in his book. Apart from that, this is all what I wanted to say, and I think this will be a very sweet book if it is published. And for this, once again, I would like to congratulate Selahattin. Thank you.
I will say a few things. Since we are running out of time, I will proceed in Turkish right now because I would like to save some time for discussion, contributions or questions. Hocam, sizinle birçok
Professor, I do agree with you in many subjects. We should change our way of understanding of democracy. Your findings require a universal understanding is necessary, and this liberating democracy is a way of being and co-living. And more importantly from my side is that a human-based understanding. I'm a constitutional lawyer and I'm giving lectures on the law of equality. A human rights or right understanding based on human rights is actually bringing the end of the life on the planet, and for the other living beings it is bringing an exploitation order, and the world is running out. Actually, in this democracy understanding rather than human oriented understanding, you are recommending multiple subjects understanding. It's very important because a straight wild savage development understanding, neoliberal policies in public or private sphere, when we look at all these policies in the world, there is a significant metabolic crack. And this has become a subject which is mentioned in many studies and papers. I do agree with you in that. And your understanding of liberating democracy is touching upon the gender equality. And an important subject is making a reference to a favored digitalization process where there will not be a digital divide. It's important for the dynamics of the 21st century, and also your emphasis on the concept of human dignity is important. I'm going to get some support from Erbay in this point, in particular, in order to make the theoretical debate more concrete, and in order to find out the implementing methodologies of liberating democracy, because as a lawyer I have a tendency to make things concrete. For example, this new understanding of municipalities, or in this new liberating democracy, the political powers, dominant powers relationship, how it will be formed. And political authorities you are talking about. And at this point, what I can think of is that from the perspective of constitutional law, other than three powers of legislative, executive, and judiciary, there is a fourth bench, which are the independent and politically neutral institutions. So apart from these three, this fourth power is important for sustainability of democracy, and their contribution in monitoring is important. In the liberating democracy model of Selahattin, as this could be used as a fourth power. What would you think about these kind of independent monitoring and overseeing organizations? Right after that, I come back to Turkey, considering what you have written. And when I come to Turkey, I see a fraction structure. In particular, when we consider the conflict and dilemma between the central and local, and when we consider that the central and local together create the state, and they are each oriented units, and they have contributions on the realization of our constitutional rights by providing public service, starting from right of housing, right to cities, right to health. Both local governments and central government has to mobilize to act together significantly. The environmental crisis, when we consider the ecological crisis, in this sense, we are inside a significant crisis. However, when we look from the perspective of Turkey, for the realization of your model, I believe it's a bit difficult at this moment because there is no harmony between the local and the central. Local and central are in a conflict indeed. And for the citizens' perspective, this is creating a problem in having access to rights and liberties. And here there is a significant problem about the legislation, and this legislation remaining from old times are still in force, and without eliminating, lifting those laws, a liberatory democracy model will not be implemented. We can only discuss this model on a theoretic basis. We have 7 minutes remaining. My last remark is this. In particular, in the conclusion, in the beginning of your paper, you were rather showing that this liberating democracy aims at a peaceful society, community order, but in the closing remark, you say that a democratic and collective resistance is an important component of the liberating democracy in this sense. I think it's even more important because in the societies which are deeply divided like Turkey, negotiation and continuous search for reconciliation is causing the silencing of different and alternative voices. Therefore, in deeply divided communities, recognition of conflict and giving value to the conflict is important. What I mean by conflict is hearing different voices and safeguarding the hearing audibility of the alternative voices. In that sense, all those pressures in a corner. What do you say? Thank you. I think it's my my judges questioning judges are great. Thank you both. Thank you all. You have read my work very seriously, and I would like to. Not all of the audience could listen to the whole text. Actually, this is not the whole text. I read 25-30 pages, but in total it's 250 pages. So I have written this in this way, and our senior İlhan Tekeli saw it, and he asked me to get printed. But when this very important MARUF meeting was on the agenda, I narrowed it down. And actually, most of your criticisms are actually in the book, but I would like to give some responses. My friend Kelmend asks a question. He generally, I would like to thank him for liking the presentation. He asks, what's the question, what's the difference between liberal democracy and liberatory democracy? But later he answered that question himself. Liberal democracy, in particular in the neoliberal term, what kind of thing is that? He explained and he gave the answer. So here this liberatory term In no literature that word exists. We have libertarian, liberal, etc., but not I have produced this term, liberatory term myself. We are going to fill the blanks all together. Here I have put some elements. We are going to develop them. You presented some very valuable elements. We will work on that. This is a process. Nobody can create something overnight. But we should get out of this. Democracy is not representative democracy or liberal democracy. It's obvious that it's not democracy. So I do not consider them as legitimate ways of democracy. And I'm not focusing on that right now because I'm trying to look from a more utopic perspective. Our friend Kelmend in particular emphasized something, public space. This is very important. And there's one other subject, he's very right, that's the security issue. Security and fear is created so that certain regimes can stand up. We do not know how long they will survive. But this is a serious problem, and we need to dwell upon that separately. And the issue of networks is very important. I totally agree him. We are a network here at the end of the day. Unions, we are all networks. And our friends is also a network, in my opinion. This localization and common vision issue, I totally agree. Very good findings. When it comes to the remarks of my friend Erbay, I thank him for these nice words for me. He says this is a specific writing form. It's an artistic. This is all I can do, Erbay. When I write in a different way, I just throw it away. So as I'm getting older and my intellect is going down, but if I cannot make a connect between my mind and my spirit, then it's not meaningful. Other people are doing that. I say nothing to them. I read them. I benefit a lot from them, but that does not satisfy me. But the fact that you have seen it, I'm very happy. It makes me very happy. And I'm proud of you because you used to be my student in the past. And different thinkers, hosting different thinkers as a guest. Expressed. Actually, it was my goal. And I think a thinking, an opinion, an emotion, if someone before me or in my age, if there is someone said it, expressed it very beautifully, why I shouldn't pay homage to him? Why I shouldn't show my respect? Otherwise, I can put it in my book by changing a few words and I can pretend as with smile. I didn't do that. Professor Selahattin, the broadcast can be cut in. We have 1.5 minutes. It will be closed automatically. And what you say is very important. I couldn't come to that point about the principles. Spirituality is very important. It's handled in a broad way. The issue of the principles and phenomena. You're right, I didn't want to use phenomena, but when it comes to the urban issue, I cannot stop myself, but thank you for that. I'm going to stop it. Our sister Zülfiye has very important findings, multiple subjects, gender equality, digital divide. These are broader. What could be the implementation methods? But in my book, I didn't enter into that subject. Here, as Erbay said, like sea lighthouse. The lighthouse is a very good analogy. I thought of something like that, and I have implementation, practical methods work. I have wrote a book about municipalities. I have 50 different practice proposals, but I didn't go into that because this has a different quality, and democratic resistance is important, and it's not in conflict with peace. It's always peaceful, never resorting to weapons or something else. It's a right. It's in German constitution and in many constitutions. There is a right for resistance. When it comes to Turkey, I didn't enter into Turkey because my work is the world. I'm a world citizen. I still have this perspective. I don't laugh. I'm coming from a mountain village, but I'm for that reason I'm looking from a distance, a higher position, and I have been in politics, but I did not get into Turkey in this work. Thank you very much. You made me very happy. Thank you very much, Professor. I thought the book is only as much as what has been sent to us, but I found out that it is thicker. I'm going to share it. Maybe if it will be a book and we are going to publish it. Thank you very much.